Hi and welcome back to Retro Inc. podcast with myself, Adam, and my co-host,
Andy. Bonsoir.
Bonsoir, bonjour, ça va?
Ça va bien, merci, et toi?
That was about as much French as we learned at school, and on that subject we are going to be talking about a little bit of our childhood memories.
Indeed.
Yeah, well, I was born in 1970, so by the time I was like 4 years old, the TV was just the only thing that we had. I mean, there was 3 channels. I don't even think there was 3 channels. Yeah, there was 3 channels. And then there was the cinema. So to start with, my first sort of cinema memory was going to see Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I don't think I made it past when that Wicked Witch handed the red apple and to Snow White, and I was off. I was off out of that cinema, scared the bejeebies out of me. But I did see a lot of the Disney movies, Pinocchio, Dumbo, and the like. But really, the basis of the childhood was getting those toys for birthday and Christmas. Now, from sort of 1974 to 77, it was pretty much TV-based toys before the Star Wars toys happened.
Yeah.
And TV was, it was after school. So when you got home from school, TV was on. And if you were, preschool, you would have got programs like lunchtime. So really from sort of 1974, we had a program called Tiswas, which was on a Saturday morning starring Chris Tarrant. Mm-hmm. We had Sesame Street, which started in 1969. I mean, who didn't love Sesame Street, man? And from those puppets, we had films like Labyrinth and Yoda. We had Bagpuss, the saggy old cloth cat. We had Rainbow with Geoffrey and Bungle, Zippy and George. Zippy and George. We had Banana Splits, which was a Hanna-Barbera live action.
Is that 1 banana, 2 banana, 3 banana, 4?
That's the one. Yeah. Never. I mean, I watched an episode of that on YouTube, and I still did not understand what the hell was going on that. I mean, they seriously were smoking some strong stuff or something.
They were indeed.
Yeah. I mean, that was basically on from 68 to 70, so it was just reruns that we were seeing. Blue Peter had obviously been on since 1958, and that was always on around sort of 5 o'clock. The Clangers, which started in 1969, was always on, as was another program called Ivor the Engine.
Yeah.
We had Rhubarb and Custard, and mostly the real sort of the programs really started to hit around the sort of the 75 mark, when we started to get things like Grange Hill, a bunch of kids from Grange Hill growing up, and we also had Rent-A-Ghost. Did you ever see Rent-A-Ghost?
Yeah.
Did you?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, a lot of these you're going over, and you mentioned it a minute ago about reruns. Now, you may have a few years on me, but we're talking a time where we didn't have many channels, did we? And
no, we didn't
even myself, we had a lot of these same programs as a kid because we had reruns. That's what it was.
Yeah.
A lot of my childhood was Looney Tunes.
We had regional TV for what was ITV. We had Thames Television if you were in London,
wasn't it?
And Anglian Television. So they all produced their own. Take Heart was another BBC program, which was just basically an art show.
Was that with Tony Hart? Was it
Tony Hart? Yeah. Charlton and the Wheelies. Multicoloured Swap Shop, which was with Noel Edmonds and John Craven, who obviously didn't do John Craven's News Round, and that was obviously on every Saturday morning. Captain Caveman, the Hanna-Barbera cartoon. Pipkins. Did you ever see that thing? It was a very strange sort of puppet show. And the Flumps, which was out in 1970.
Yeah, I remember the Flumps. Yeah.
Crackerjack, which was at 5 to 5. It must be Crackerjack, with various different hosts of that program. A Magic Roundabout generally finished the children's TV before bed, and that was such a trippy thing to watch before bedtime. Obviously, it had some connotations, and people obviously who were taking some kind of illicit medicine in their teens always thought that program had connotations in it. Play School was on from 1964 to 1988, believe it or not, and for preschool kids. There was a program that was on very infrequently. It was called HR Puff and Snuff,
Puff stuff, yeah.
Puff stuff, yeah. Do you know that one?
Yeah, I do indeed, yeah.
Yeah, that was a very bizarre thing. I mean, I saw that finished in 1970, so I would have saw reruns of that. Jackanory was on from 1965 to 1996, and I think the most famous episode of Jackanory starred Rick Mayall reading the stories. And I'd highly recommend anybody going on YouTube and just put in Jackanory Rick Mayall. It's just wonderful. Saturday nights, we had The Muppet Show from 1976 to 1981. Children of the Stones was a series in 1977. Sigmund and the Sea Monsters was from 73 to 75. The Fat Albert Show and the Cosby Kids. I don't think we need to go there.
Let's stay away from the Cosbys, yeah.
A wonderful little puppet show was called Fingerbobs.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I remember Fingerbobs. Yeah.
Wonderful, very gentle. We had a program that was on during the school holidays called Why Don't You from 1973 to 1995. My favourite TV show of this period was Battle of the Planets.
Oh, that was good. That was a good show.
I think it was later called Voltron, but there was Mark Keop. It was basically sort of like Han, Chewie, Leia, Luke, and droids in space. And this Japanese show was just incredible to watch. Each flew their own ship and joined together and made some giant ship. A former Doctor Who. Played Wordle Gummidge from 1979 to 1981. Can you guess who that was?
No.
No idea?
No.
I'll leave that with you. Here Come the Double Deckers was a program in 1971 that was rerun. Crystal Tips and Alistair, which was 1972. One of the other TV shows that was on ITV was Happy Days with Ron Howard.
Cool.
And Henry Winkler. We had Help, Help, It's the Hair Bear Bunch from Hanna-Barbera. The Bugaloos, Dr. Snuggles, and Animal Magic, which was a fantastic program, which was just life in a zoo, and it was wonderful. Record Breakers, which...
yeah, fantastic.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Cheggers Plays Pop, and sadly we lost Mr. Chegwin a couple of years ago, but that was a fantastic TV show for kids.
Yeah.
We have Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, Play Away, Hector's House, Vision On, Hong Kong Phooey, which was another Hanna-Barbera cartoon, Andy Pandy, The Pink Panther Show, and another one which a lot of people didn't see was called Electra Woman and Dinah Girl. This was from 76 and 77.
I've heard of this.
The $6 Million Man, which was another one of my favourite TV shows, and Dr. Shrinker. We also had another TV kids cartoon called The New Shmoo, and we had Yogi Bear, Amy's World. It was just, there was some very, very odd stuff on back then.
You say that. A lot of things you've mentioned are very quaint. Very quaint. The 90s was a very different time, my friend.
Totally different. But the thing was, there were these crossover TV shows that kids were allowed to watch. So, we had the Dukes of Hazzard. I was just about allowed to watch a little bit of Starsky and Hutch. We had Battlestar Galactica, which I know you're a big fan of the original TV series. Oh,
yeah, I love it, yeah.
There was the 1966 Batman series, Adam West and Burt Ward.
Yeah, I watched a lot of that when I was a kid, yeah. It's
a staple of my upbringing. And, for Christmas and birthday, Corgi released the Batmobile, which had firing missiles and a big sort of metal plate that came out the front. There's the Batboat and the helicopter. And, of course, there was James Bond movies. Now, obviously too young for those films, but I did have the Aston Martin and the Lotus Esprit. There was the Drax helicopter, the Moonraker car, and the space shuttle with a little satellite in it. And the USS Enterprise, because Star Trek was just huge back then.
Yeah,
and it's just such a great shame that Star Trek really, Next Gen was an exception, but the original Star Trek series it's still fantastic to watch.
I was never a fan of the original series. I don't know if I got to it too late in the day. However, a big staple of my childhood viewing was The Next Gen. You know, I remember sitting there with Sky, and they were, you know, doing the little teasers for this new upcoming Star Trek. That we hadn't had one in, what was it, nearly 15 years, was it? Something like that, and maybe a bit longer. We hadn't had a Star Trek series. And I remember those teasers coming out, and me and my dad and my mum sitting there going, oh, we're going to watch this. And we did. You know, I sat there and I religiously watched every single episode of The Next Gen. So Star Trek was always a big part of my childhood as well. But The Next Gen, as opposed to the original series, I find the original series to be a little bit too camp for my liking now.
It could be at times, yeah. But I mean, as a kid, it was.
Oh, I can totally understand. I mean, there are scenes. There are scenes. I think, is it Arena? Is it the one where he's fighting? Is it Gort? You know, on the planet, the big lizard monster with the rocks.
Oh.
That's fantastic episodes. You can't knock that. I just don't like the overall. You know, the aesthetic, and it's a very much a product of its time, and I don't think it stands up, especially when you get things like The Next Gen that came out and looking like it did. That's something we said we're going to talk about is one day is the Next Gen and the things
absolutely.
They...
Well, Next Generation didn't start until 28th of September 1987, so before that, you know, all we had was just the original TV series. Dinky brought out the USS Enterprise and the Klingon ship, and they were great toys to have as a child. The thing is, back then, you know, toys were very, very simple, and it wasn't until 1977 when the early bird kit came out with 4 figures before the film of Star Wars that I was completely and utterly hooked and addicted to collecting Star Wars toys, and still am to this very day, as I bought some today. Thunderbirds was also a huge and profound TV program by Jerry Anderson. Previously to that, we'd seen Captain Scarlet and Joe 90 and Thunderbolt XL5, but Thunderbirds today is still highly recommended to watch, because if you look at the way that not so much the puppetry, but the way that the models have been built and filmed, and see how films now are done, where they're still using that same kind of model, if you like, for explosions and building the set pieces. Jerry Anderson was a maverick, and his Supermarination team developed something really quite special.
Well, it's funny you say Jerry Anderson, because there was one thing that I wanted to bring up that
Space 1999 was another fantastic TV series for adults, but
yeah, something more in my era. I was 11 years old when this first came on to the scene. Is Space Precinct.
Oh yes, indeed, yeah.
I was a big Space Precinct fan when I was a kid. That's something I can't remember what night it was on, but I remember, I think it might have been a Tuesday, you know, because my dad and my brother were very much into football when I was growing up, but they still are now. And that used to be on, and I used to think it was something my mum did.
Wasn't it on Channel 4?
Yeah, I think it was, and it was something me and my mum did.
Early days
I remember,
of Channel 4,
yeah, and I remember it being a night where my brother and my dad wasn't there, and we would watch Space Precinct, because it would be the night it was on. They would be out, and we would watch that with you know, dinner together. And yeah, I remember religiously watching that show and thoroughly enjoying it. However, nostalgia, it's one of those where Thunderbird stands up. I get it. I get your Space 1999. These things stand up. Space Precinct, not so much. And I think the 90s was quite an awkward time for things like this, because we were transitioning into the world of CGI and computer generated, you know. So I think as wonderful as it is to see Space Precinct, it's one of those that let's keep it back in the 90s.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
There are a lot of the films that were on at the cinema. I mean, I remember going to see Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, which was originally released in 1971. I remember seeing the rerun of that. So I was probably about 5. You had the Muppet movie in 1979, and of course Star Wars, which was then known as Episode 4 in 77.
Yeah.
Bedknobs and Broomsticks was also another film that I saw the rerun. That was in 1971. Rescuers, which was 77, and Aristocrats in 70. We had The Escape to Witch Mountain and the fantastic musical of Bugsy Malone in 1976. Benji. There's always a dog film every decade, isn't there?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Herbie Rides Again. All the Herbie films about the little VW bug. Well, they were massive hit movies back then. Black Stallion in 1979. We had the Snoopy Come Home.
Sorry, what was your first film you saw at cinema?
Would have been Snow White.
Snow White, okay.
That's my earliest memory. I don't remember watching anything before.
My earliest was Land Before Time, and that came out in 88, so I would have been 5 when that came out. And I remember that specifically more for the fact of the event that when we saw it, because we'd been to Birmingham, and I don't even know I remember this from 5 years old, but we'd been to Birmingham for the day for something, probably football, knowing my childhood, and not bitter at all. And we were driving back, and we stopped at a Pizza Hut, and I remember it was when Pizza Hut did toys with meals as well, kids toys.
Oh yes,
and there was a Littlefoot puppet it was a really nice sort of vinyl puppet that you put your hand in and you could collect them all. And I remember I ended up getting about 4 of them. I think my dad must have bought them off of him for me. So it wasn't all bad. It wasn't just football. He did buy me things. Making up for it, I think. But yeah, I remember getting them, and I still have my Littlefoot up in my mum and dad's loft somewhere to this day from 5 years old. Yeah, I have got to find that out. Yeah, sorry.
1978 was the release of Superman, the Richard Donner movie with Christopher Reeve. That was such a massive, massive hit, and a huge, huge film. Pete's Dragon was in 1977 as well, which was another phenomenal film where it mixed live action with animation. Another Herbie Goes to Monte Carlo movie. Charlotte's Web in 1973. I don't remember that, but I do remember seeing again a rerun of that. Watership Down was another huge film in 1978.
Oh, bloody hell, let's not go there.
Oh, man. Robin Hood, the Disney animation, was in 1973.
Was it really? I would have thought that would have been earlier.
73. Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger was also in 1977. I remember getting to see that at the cinema. And along with the Hobbit cartoon. Do you remember that?
Wow, that's amazing.
77.
That film. I love that film. Such a shame we didn't get any more. Yeah.
Well, the one thing that I don't think we ever got was an actual Asterix movie, did we?
Asterix? There's loads of Asterix movies.
I don't remember seeing that in the 70s, but I know that was a huge hit for kids really getting into.
There was a load of animated Asterix movies, and they are something. When I was a kid, I did watch a hell of a lot of them. Let me have I'm just going to
have a little look at that.
Google later, because
there was a movie that was really very odd, but I absolutely loved it in 1978. It was a film called The Cat from Outer Space. And
from Outer Space, I know this.
It had this sort of it had this sort of space collar. It could talk and all kinds of stuff. It was just an incredible film. We had of course, also in 1978 we had Grease, which I did go and see at the cinema, and obviously didn't know all the sort of the teenage talk that was going on, but it's such a great film to watch. The Cat in the Hat films were also around then, and Charlie Brown's Thanksgiving, Fiddler on the Roof, too young for that, and The Lion, Witch and the Wardrobe was in 1979. There's just some incredible movies in the 70s. But, I think when films started to get really good was when you were at that age of around 10, and that would have been 1980. That was Empire Strikes Back. So, really, my film of the 70s would have been certainly Star Wars.
There you go. Sorry, we'll go to Asterix here. These are the films.
Yeah.
In 1967 was the first one, was Asterix the Gaul. Then we had the 12 Tasks of Asterix in 1968 we had Asterix and Cleopatra. In 1976 we had the 12 Tasks of Asterix, which is a fantastic movie.
Well, that's the one I do remember. I do remember that one. Okay.
Then we had Asterix in Britain, Asterix Conquers America. Then we had one with Caesar and the bar fight. And then, I've seen most of these when I was a kid.
These must have been dubbed into English because they were.
They are French films. I mean, even the first one is called Asterix Le Gaulius, Asterix the Gaul in French. there are some live action movies. A strange one. One of my friends is actually in one of the live action movies. But in Asterix, what one is it? Is it in? I think it's Mission Cleopatra. But yeah, one of my friends is in that briefly. However, if you've never seen Asterix, and the 12 Tasks of Asterix, that's
the one I do remember.
It's
seeing.
Brilliant when he's going through the pyramid and he has to get the form, and they're pushing him from pillar to post. It's brilliant. Really good film. Sorry, yeah.
So I mean, I think when you get that little bit older, and you're starting to watch TV a little bit more, you start to sort of. You're starting to sort of see less British shows and a lot more US ones at that point. I mean, certainly sort of from about 1980 with Knight Rider, The Cosby Show, which was a huge hit. Magnum.
We're not going there. Okay.
We got Alf. Do you remember Alf?
Alien Life Form with his penchant to eat cats. Yeah.
Yeah, mate. We had Miami Vice from 1984 to 1990. We had The Wonder Years, which was a fantastic TV show. I think that was Channel 4. We had The A-Team from 83 to 87, of course, and we had MASH, 72 to 83. We had Growing
MASH
Pains,
is one of my all-time
Family
favourite
Ties,
series. Family Ties good.
Blues, Full House, The Golden Girls, which was just a magical show. The Dukes of Hazzard was from 79 to 85. Did you see the remake of that? They did a movie not so long ago. Yeah.
With
who was Daisy Duke? She was
that's the singer, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's her name?
She was. I mean, she wasn't hot enough as far as I was concerned. Anyway, he had Cagney and Lacey. They're the female cop duo based in New York. Moonlighting.
Sorry, I'm just going to put this into context. The Dukes of Hazzard remake. Yeah. Dukes of Hazzard remake has the tomatometer score of 14%.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's
a duff film.
It really is, yeah. And it was Sean William Scott, Johnny Knoxville, and Jessica Simpson.
Ah, just the girl. Yeah.
Yeah. Avoid.
Roseanne was on from 1988 to 2018. She's been in the press recently, Roseanne.
For being an idiot.
John Goodman, is that right?
Yeah,
John
Goodman.
Yeah. His career's gone from strength to strength, hasn't it? Really,
he's brilliant, isn't he?
He's a fantastic actor.
Have you seen Cloverfield Lane?
Yeah,
that's good.
I mean, I was a big fan of the first one, and I thought Cloverfield Lane was great.
That's how you do a sequel.
The messy Netflix film.
I haven't bothered watching it.
Didn't bother with that. Yeah. Different Strokes. What are you talking about, Willis? Was on from 78 to 1986. Saturday Night Live. Did you ever see Saturday Night Live, the American SNL?
Not then.
No.
I do now. Key and Peele.
Married with Children.
Yeah.
Facts of Life, Perfect Strangers, and Happy Days, which was still on back then. We had another program which has been taking the mickey out of many times, called The Love Boat. We had The Greatest American Hero. We had Taxi, of course, with Danny DeVito. We had The Next Generation from 87 to 94. Airwolf, which is currently showing now on Channel 5.
Brilliant.
The Simpsons, of course, which started in 1989. I mean,
30 years now.
It's incredible, isn't it?
30 years of Simpsons. I mean, they've just.
How many of those episodes do you think you've seen of The Simpsons?
Well, given the fact we still watch it nightly in my house, quite a few.
What series are they currently on now?
Isn't it series 29 is the one that's on at the moment? Because it's series 30 is they've just commissioned 30 for the 30 years of The Simpsons. But yeah, I mean, over the last, say, since the movie, I think it's taken a bit of a downturn in quality. But then that's to be expected when you're writing a show for 30 years. There's only so many stories you can cover. It's still enjoyable, though.
Isn't it? It is. I mean, if it's on, you just watch it, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, it's one of those things because it's got that longevity to it, because I think it's perfect for families. My daughter's 4, and when we all get home from work and we've picked her up from the childminder and we have, a little bit of time together when we come home, we can all enjoy it.
6 o'clock, it's on, isn't it?
We all enjoy it. I mean, I've got hundreds of them saved on my Skybox, because whenever we get want 5 minutes, half an hour to sit down and watch something together, The Simpsons is perfect for that.
Yeah. The adults get the jokes, the kids don't. Is absolutely ideal.
Yeah.
Laverne and Shirley was a big hit show in the States, as well as Dallas, of course, from 1978 to 91. One of my favourite shows was a show called The Fall Guy. This had Lee Majors, who was formerly in The $6 Million Man, starred as a stuntman, sort of solving crimes. Talking of solving crimes, there was Murder, She Wrote, or Murder, She Hopes, was as I used to call it. Murphy Brown, Designing Women, The Jeffersons, and the fantastic Quantum Leap, mate.
Mate, that has got one of the most heartbreaking finales of any show I've ever seen.
Hasn't it?
Yeah, that's.
I don't know.
Scott Bakula is phenomenal in that.
Such a great TV show.
Given the fact he only has to act for half of each episode as well, let's be honest, when it's somebody else,
Yes.
But you've got to give credit to those actors as well that played Scott Bakula playing them. It was a very clever concept of a show. But I remember watching that finale. I was in Florida as a kid, and it's when he gets home, doesn't he, and he sees his wife, and he has to go back in to save someone, and if he goes back, there's chances he will never back
come
home
back again. That's right.
And I was only 8 or 9 or something like that, and that was heartbreaking to watch. I mean, I think that taught me some lessons in life watching that.
Well, whoever wrote that series knew exactly how it was going to finish, and finished it off in such a fantastic way.
It's almost like J.J. Abrams wrote it.
Yeah. Well, it could have been, couldn't it? MacGyver, L.A. Law, and the fantastic Mork and Mindy with Robin Williams.
Nano.
Oh, mate. I mean, that was such a simple story. It didn't seem to sort of do anything or go anywhere, but it was simply just a magical show. Chips, about 2 highway patrol guys. That was a huge hit as well. And I remember my little brother was mad on that TV show, as was Saved by the Bell. Did you ever catch Saved by the Bell?
I did catch Saved by the Bell, mate. Yes, I did. So
finished in 1993 and started in 1989. I mean, just a bunch of high school kids larking about, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Then we had Dynasty and Remington Steele, and again, the TV show that had been on throughout my entire childhood, right up to 1981, was The Muppet Show. And, it's still fantastic to watch. I think there was also a huge amount of other TV shows that were coming out in the 80s, along with Airwolf, with all the sort of Glenn A. Larson shows, wasn't there?
Yeah.
So we had Street Hawk and Automan. We had obviously Knight Rider. We also had The Highwayman, starring Sam. Oh, what was his last name? Sorry, Sam Jones. From Flash Gordon.
Flash Gordon. Yes, Sam Jones, sure.
And that was a great TV show. It was always on too late for me. It was on around sort of 11 o'clock. But those guys, Glenn A. Larson and Mike Post, I mean, who can't remember any of those TV show theme tunes? They were just, as soon as you hear them, they take you right back.
Yeah, totally.
They take you right back. But, once we got to sort of the end of the 80s, Red Dwarf.
Right. Now you're getting into my territory here.
Which is where we were going, which is going into yours, because you obviously were born in what year?
I was born in 1983.
So in 1983, so by the time you were sort of 4 or 5 years old, what were your little toys were you getting for birthdays and Christmas?
When I was about 4 or 5, what was I getting? I mean, mostly I had a lot of hand-me-downs of my brother's Star Wars toys. I say my brothers, I believe they were my dad's, but he just pretended they were my brothers. It's before geek was cool, wasn't it? But yeah, I had a lot of Star Wars toys, but I was mostly playing with, when I was a kid, was things like Monsters in My Pocket, Mighty Max, Boglins. I had a bit of a love for everything a little bit spooky, and I think that was this sort of the era, because we had that what was his name, the big purple monster that was with the chains on his wrist. It was a cuddly toy. I can never remember his. My Pet Monster, that was
right.
it. Yeah. So I had one of them when I was a kid.
Cabbage Patch Dolls that sort of time as well.
Yeah, well, your Garbage Patch. I mean, I
they were
remember
all
the
very
Garbage
spooky,
Patch.
weird looking.
Yeah,
stuff, wasn't it?
it was a, like I say, you grew up and you had very quaint things as a child. You know, you had finger bobs and things. And when I was growing up, it was very much Nickelodeon, I think, injecting some sort of weird visual LSD into children's brains. Because, you know, I was growing up on things like Ren and Stimpy and Rocko's Modern Life and Our Real Monsters, and they are bizarre. I mean, there's a clip of Ren and Stimpy the other day that somebody sent me about one of them cutting a piece of wood. And, you know how we talk about jokes in things for the adults that kids won't get? This goes well beyond a joke. It is perverse, weird, and downright would not be allowed on TV these days. I'll have to find the clip out and send you because you won't believe what you see. So for me growing up, I mean, a lot of my toys were, like I say, Monsters in My Pocket. So I've still got the whole set of them. I had a lot of Boglins. I was a big gamer as a kid. You know, my dad was in computers, so we always had something there in the house. Commodore 64s, Amiga 500s. I mean, these were all my childhood. I was a big gamer. A lot of Star Wars toys. It was a lot of Hamilton. He-Man toys I had a lot of. I had Ram Man. You know, I had Adam. I had them all. I had the Great Castle Grayskull, as well. I don't know if you've ever seen that. Castle Grayskull.
I saw a box one of those going for some considerable money a little ago.
It's a shame I don't have them still. I think I've got Ram Man somewhere at my mum's house. I'll have to dig him out.
I think most kids of your period as well had Tamagotchis.
I didn't. That was the thing. I didn't.
What about Rubik's Cube? I mean, I think
Rubik's Cube. Yeah, we all had one of them sitting in your toy box somewhere, half done and breaking apart. But they're timeless classic, aren't they? Even now, my daughter has some Rubik's Cubes. Same thing, sits in the drawer, half done.
Yeah. Talking of which, I mean, you think about what's actually around now. I mean, we've got gaming in your pocket. Tamagotchi was one of those things that was the sort of number one toy in the 90s. But, you know, putty is really big now, and slime.
My
they're all huge things in the 90s.
But then you say that as well. If you just look at this,
Super Soakers.
I don't know if you can see it. No, you can't see it. I have on my phone Tamagotchi Forever.
Right.
So now we have Tamagotchi in app form. This is something that I play with my daughter. I mean, to be honest with you, I think he's dead now because we haven't looked at him in a good few weeks. But yeah, Tamagotchis are still going, and they're actually just bought out classic Tamagotchis again. So if you go into some popular high street toy shops that aren't open on Sundays, if that's not enough of a clue for you, they are actually selling classic Tamagotchis now as well. So it is a revival, isn't it? It's a retro revival at the moment. Everything we had as kids seems to be coming back, especially.
Well, Pokemon is another one of those things. Did we? So you know, you were obviously getting these sort of toys from about this sort of age of. You know,
that was
6,
again.
7, 8. Weren't you?
Pokemon wasn't a thing for me either. That was when I hit sort of secondary school. Early secondary school was when things like that started taking off.
So, what TV shows were you watching?
When I was growing up, I mean, it was a bit strange, but for me, my biggest thing as a kid was Red Dwarf. We had a TV in my bedroom.
And what year did Red Dwarf start?
Wasn't it 1988? I believe. I'm just going to have to quickly do the Google on that as well.
You would have
5.
Really?
5.
Watching it then, because I think that was on about sort of 7, maybe 8 o'clock on BBC Two.
Well, we had it all videotaped, and this is the thing, because we had in my bedroom, me and my brother, we had an old TV. First one we had was actually black and white, that we had to tune in. But
with the area on the top of it, and to sort of wiggle that around till you got a decent signal. Yeah, I remember watching the embassy, the Iranian embassy siege on a black and white TV in my bedroom.
Yeah, bloody hell. Red Dwarf came out in 88, so I was 5. So I think probably not straight away, but Red Dwarf has always been a staple in my life. Even now, last night I was sitting there watching Red Dwarf while I was doing some editing for the podcast. I have probably watched Red Dwarf more than anything ever by anyone, even Star Wars. I can reel off the script for most of Red Dwarf as it goes on. I know it inside out, upside down, back to front. That was, we had it on a VHS that we recorded off of BBC Two. I even remember the BBC Two vignettes of the number 2 bouncing along and all the different styles they used to do with it, because we watched that video so much. And it used to be every night, me and my brother, because we shared a room, we'd get into bed and on the TV we'd put Red Dwarf on until we fell asleep, and my dad would come in and turn it off.
Was you allowed to watch X-Files?
X-Files I did watch as a kid. My parents were very very liberal with the things they let me watch. I think they understood I was sensible enough to understand, and
Yeah.
it was a different time then as well. It wasn't people mollycoddling everyone into worrying about whether or not video games incite violence. It's just whether or not you're born with it, I think. But Red Dwarf was a big thing for me. But it was when I was a kid, the TV programs I watched on TV I was very much into Power Rangers. I still kind of enjoy it now for the fun of it, because it is terrible. A strange little fact for you with the Power Rangers: I have a friend who's heavily into it. Love you, Stuart. He was telling me about it, that in Japan they have another show, I think it's Super Sentai, and it is the same as our Power Rangers, but only for the fighting bits. The same scenes are used, but when they brought it over to the West, they refilmed.
Cut those out, did they?
They refilmed the non-action sequences out of outfit and costume to be Western characters. But when they actually use the fight scenes and the monsters, they use the Japanese footage from Super Sentai. Because to us over in the West, it wouldn't make as much sense. So, I mean, that's a great way of rehashing your material and getting twice the bang for your buck, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I was heavily into Power Rangers when that came out.
Did you also catch from Japan Monkey and Water Margin?
I did, yeah. I watched a lot of that growing up. That was mostly, I think it was a Sunday afternoon thing. If I stayed at my grandparents' for the night, I'd watch that on TV. Yeah, so I watched a lot of that. And it was also, for me, Nightmare was a big thing. Now, I don't know if you remember Nightmare. It was a immersive, almost virtual reality style TV show. It was very early. It was very clever. It was Dungeons and Dragons for the real world. And what there'd be the, I can never remember his name, but there was the host, which was this guy wearing the leggings and the codpiece, and he was like the dungeon master, essentially running the game. And you would have 3 normal kid contestants would be sitting there in front of a TV screen, and their friend would be on a green screen, wearing a helmet that covered his vision, and he'd have a knapsack, and they directed him through Nightmare, through the
similar to kind of Crystal Maze type of thing.
Crystal Maze, kind of in a way, I suppose, for interactive gameplay. But it was like, so he would walk in a room and they'd be like, "Where am I?" And his friends would be like, "Right, you're in a room. There's a bridge, and on that bridge there's a troll," and it would be someone that was a real person dressed as a troll, and they would interact with them. And it'd be like, "Right, so what do you want me to do?" They're like, "Step forwards, walk forward." So stop. Okay, talk to the troll, and he would interact with them and like, "Oh, I've got this magic amulet," and you'd be like, "Right, okay, use the dagger that we found so and so," and they would die, and there'd be a timer, and there'd be all these riddles, and there'd be clues, and most of the people never made it out of Nightmare.
Was this a show that had grandfather who was some kind of aspidistra sort of plant? I seem to remember a show in the and I think this was probably late 80s, 90s, where it was one of these sort of game shows, and you stepped. I think the finale was you had to get across this path, and someone would direct them, and there was an invisible plant or something.
Well, it always changed, so maybe you saw an episode of it. But I mean,
I don't remember that show.
Is something that I wish they would bring back now with today's technology, because I think it would be so much fun to watch. Yeah, and I mean, essentially, it was Dungeons and Dragons for kids. And it was real. It was visceral. They could stand there and direct their friend through the dungeon and fight these creatures. It was a fantastic thing to watch. And as for that, because it was very much, when I was a kid, it was very much the inception of video games being cool.
Yeah.
Games Master was a big thing for me.
That was
with Patrick
fantastic
Moore.
show, wasn't it?
It was brilliant. I mean, to get him on board as well as the Games Master was something special.
Unfortunately, though, mate, kids don't sit and watch BBC One or ITV anymore, because when they come home from school, the TV is on Netflix or YouTube or wherever they're at. So those type of shows, as good as they are, you're not going to see those sort of likes again, are you?
No, not at all, mate.
Let's face it, a lot of kids are gaming, but gaming shows generally now are on sort of Channel 5, aren't they?
There is one on Disney XD, which has got Alana Pierce from IGN on there.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's aimed at modern gaming. It's just essentially like watching YouTube videos, and this is the trouble, the way the formats and the mediums have changed over the years. Like you say, we don't get things like this. This was great. This was kids like me. I had a Mega Drive, I had a Master System, a Mega Drive, a Commodore. I never had a NES, so I never got to see those things. But when I watched Games Master, I could see those games being played. We didn't have YouTube. I couldn't just type in Super Mario World. I didn't see it. I maybe saw a screenshot in a computer game magazine, but that was about it. And I got to sit there and watch Games Master. I got to see this stuff, and it was great. There's the competition, and I really enjoyed that. But going on from that, there was another show. Now, not many people will remember this or have even ever heard of it. It was very short-lived. I think it might have only done 1 or 2 seasons. But it was a series called Cyberzone. And it was hosted by Craig Charles. And I believe this was one of Craig Charles' first hosting things before Robot Wars and etc. And Cyberzone, and this always sits in my memory of what it was. And now maybe in my head it's a lot more elaborate and fantastical than it was, but it was VR, and they had the haptic wheel, where you walk on the ball, and they had the headset on, and you had to go through this thing and shoot these other players. And I don't really remember it in its entirety of what the actual main sort of quest was and the main outset of the game. But I remember religiously watching that with my brother. We would run into that room to watch Cyberzone, and I remember it being cancelled and how gutted I was that it wasn't returning. And I know you can watch some of it on YouTube, so that's something I'm probably going to go and do now, is go out of my way and go and watch some more Cyberzone on YouTube. Have a watch of it, tell me what you think, because it's a shame.
I'll check it out.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I think it was an awkward time, the 90s, for gaming, because it was just finding its feet in the general public market. And they, as with most of the time with gaming, they try to jump ahead before they're ready. Yeah, they try run before they can walk.
In terms of the TV shows you're watching, though, are generally that sort of focus based. Did you get to sort of watch things like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air or Friends?
Yeah, of course. I mean, Friends was something I didn't actually watch. It was an ex-girlfriend of mine. She loved it, and we was living together, and I'd never seen Friends at all. So we must have been talking at least 2002 here, before I even ever watched my first episode of Friends. And I remember
started in 1994.
Yeah, so I bought her the box set.
in 2004.
Yeah, so I would have bought her most of it. And we sat there, and she started watching it, and the next thing I know, I'd watched every episode back to front 4 times over, and absolutely adore Friends. But that was more later on in life. Same as Buffy. It's my wife now. She absolutely
97 to 2003.
Yeah, Buffy is her thing. Even now we'll be walking along in the street at night, and she'll pretend to stake me in the chest and just shout Slayer at me because
Excuse my ignorance, but what was the spin-off show that came from Buffy?
Angel.
Right.
Angel, yeah. I never watched those until I met my wife, and she banged on about it, and then we ended up watching it again. It's one of my favourite shows out there. So I missed a lot out in my youth of things because I was very much a Nickelodeon kid growing up. And also, my younger years.
This is early days of having Sky.
Yeah. I mean, we got Sky when it came.
Having cable,
over here, yeah. So I remember getting The Simpsons when it first aired and everything, and I was very much Bart versus the Space Mutants on my
That started on the Tracy Ullman show, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, this is it was a strange era for me growing up because we had a lot of repeats from things that you would have seen when you were a kid. I had an older brother as well, so we lived in a time where hand-me-downs was everything. I never got anything of my own until a bit later on in life. So, I remember being very young and watching Looney Tunes a hell of a lot of Looney Tunes. My granddad had it on VHS for us. It taped off a TV, boxes and boxes of them. And we would sit there, and I remember Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote, and I'd watch, Bugs Bunny cartoons. And Tom and Jerry was a big one. I always remember the one where he's ice skating around the kitchen. I absolutely adored Tom and Jerry growing up.
There was a lot of animation out, wasn't there, in the 90s?
Yeah.
I mean, you had obviously Ren and Stimpy, Rugrats. What do you have? Ronco's Modern Life. Did you ever catch that?
Rocco's Modern Life.
Modern Life.
Absolutely
love
love
that. Yeah,
Doug. Doug I watched. Yeah,
and the SpongeBob SquarePants.
SpongeBob was a little bit after my time because, like I say, I was on that cusp of leaving in the 90s, leaving primary school and going into secondary school, and obviously you start changing your tastes in things, and I might have caught a couple of episodes of SpongeBob, but I actually appreciate SpongeBob SquarePants more now than I did then.
There was a couple of odd ones, wasn't there? That were very, very peculiar cartoons that came out. I mean, Ren and Stimpy I always thought was very peculiar.
Yeah, with their rubber nipples.
Dexter's Laboratory, Pinky and the Brain. But the one that also stemmed from a network was Beavis and Butthead.
Shut up, Beavis.
Were you a fan of that?
Yeah, I loved Beavis and Butthead, and apparently we are getting a new series soon.
Well, that would be hilarious, wouldn't it?
Be. I mean, there'd be no music because it'd be MTV, so it'd just be Jersey Shore and something else that they're watching. Unfortunately, these days.
Yeah, there wasn't a great deal. I mean, there was a great deal of music TV around at that time. I mean, I remember seeing the first couple of weeks of MTV. But Top of the Pops and the Tube were the big music shows. Did you ever catch Top of the Pops on a Thursday night?
Yeah, I watched Top of the Pops. More for the fact for the Led Zeppelin intro. I am with music. It's a very strange.
After that was the
relationship.
Paul Hardcastle, I think, wasn't that the Thin Lizzy one? Wasn't there? After the Led Zeppelin was the Thin Lizzy did one, and then Phil Lynott, and then Paul Hardcastle's one was the.
Like I say, there's a love-hate relationship for me with music. When I was growing up, I wasn't really into it as a kid. I started finding my musical feet when I was about 16, something like that. And then I heavily got into hardcore metal and things.
That never hit Top of the Pops, did it?
No, not at all. Yeah, you never got Slipknot on.
I don't think I ever saw Iron Maiden on Top of the Pops. That's for sure.
Yeah, I was heavily into that for a while, and then I got into music, started producing my own stuff, and I was in some bands and things, and then I fell out of love with music again. And these days, I was actually reading an article the other day about when you hit 30 years old, your taste in music settles. They've done a study on it that when you hit 30, there's something about people's brains that won't allow you to listen to new music with the same.
I don't agree with that.
I think as a general rule, maybe, because there's people like me that I will just listen to old stuff now. I will still listen to some newer things, but I don't. Do you remember that when you go out and you buy an album as a kid and you'd go, and you throw it on and you'd listen to it back to, front to back, and you just listen to it and repeat. I can't do that now. I just want to listen to the hits that I hear on the radio, and that's about it.
Well, the wonderful thing about cassettes was that you would get auto repeat. So when the cassette finished, it would just play the other side of the cassette. So you could literally listen to the album over and over and over again, never lift a finger.
Yeah, totally.
My dad had
especially when you sat there recording the radio, you'd have to hit play and record at the same time. Yeah.
My dad had this turntable that would, with the needle, when it went to the other record, it would play underneath the record. So it continued to play. I think it was a B&O, I think that was.
Yeah, cool. So it'd bring it back to the other side from playing. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So throughout your sort of teens, what were you watching, and what were you buying any toys for your,
I don't know what happened in my teenage years, but there is a big gap in my memory. Right. To be honest with you, I mean, I was very much a gamer, mate. I always have been, especially when I was younger. I've had every system there was over those years.
You spent your money on cartridges.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I even remember having a Master System. I don't know why Birmingham's coming up so much here, but it's about to come up again. I sort of spent my life up there. Something happened in Birmingham. But yeah, I remember having a Master System, and we sold it to somebody, and we were going somewhere, and we met them in Birmingham halfway on our journey, and I sold my Master System. I remember, what was that? I must have only been about 8 years old, and I sold it for £90. And at that time, 90 quid for an 8-year-old, that's a lot of money. And I remember being over the moon, and we put it towards buying a Mega Drive, if I remember rightly there. And I had my Mega Drive. Before that, I'd had my Amiga. That always stayed in my bedroom anyway. We had a Commodore 64. And then from my Mega Drive, I went and bought a PlayStation 1. My brother bought me a PlayStation 2 for my birthday. I bought myself a PlayStation 3. I bought myself a 360. You know, so all my life, I've always been a gamer. Always buying consoles. I was heavily into board games as a kid. We played a hell of a lot of board games in my family. So I remember Key to the Kingdom being one of my favourites. I don't know if you've ever played that.
No, I don't.
I had a fold-out board. It was fantastic. So you had this big board, and the idea was you had to get around to these different parts of it, and you had to collect 6 different items, I believe, if I remember rightly, and then you'd have to go through the whirlpool, which would open the board out, and inside there would be more room to manoeuvre on it. And there was an evil warlock that moved around the board when you rolled the dice. It was very much a sort of a layman's game of Dungeons and Dragons or something like that. I was into Hero Quest. I still have like 3 sets of it upstairs with the figures and everything. So yeah, I mean, we played a lot of board games during my sort of teenage years. And I got.
Do you remember the Steve Jackson books that were out? Steve Jackson, not to be confused with Peter Jackson, but these books were you're on a quest.
Choose your own adventure books.
Yeah, and it was saying you meet this old man, he gives you this information and says, you have a choice. You can either go left, go east, turn to page 13, or go west, turn to page 76.
Yeah, I had some of them, mate.
They were cracking.
Yeah.
There's another book called Masquerade by Kit Williams. Do you ever remember that book? Where there was actually the if you could solve beautiful artwork, and there was a book of like riddles and poems, and eventually you would get the clues to find this golden rabbit that he'd buried somewhere in Britain, and somebody did actually find this golden rabbit. It was a fantastic idea. There were some really amazing books that came out in the sort of late 80s, 90s for kids to sort of really get their teeth into. But board games was not something that particularly I was into. I mean, a bit of Connect 4 here and there, and Game of Risk occasionally.
Yeah. I actually played my first game of Risk ever about 6 months ago, believe it or not. That was not something I never played as a child, but yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was Star Wars Risk, so obviously I enjoyed it. But yeah.
That's something that I'm looking to pick up. Actually, I do know a guy who's got he's got a Star Wars Risk, and is selling that. But now, of course, gamers, board gamers, or tabletop gamers now are very much into Star Wars. Is it Star Wars Alliance? Is it called Star Wars?
Armada or Alliance, something like that. Yeah, go check out the E14 podcast. They talk a lot about that over there, and those guys are clued up. They know what they're talking about.
Well, that's what I was leading to, actually, is that it's not a dead and buried hobby, is it at all?
No, I think board games have actually, and like tabletop gaming has had a bit of a boost.
Resurgence,
yeah. I mean, in
Games Workshop was looking like they were going to close all their stores not that long ago.
They did close quite a few of them, but they're still going. I mean, the one near me in Bluewater shut a couple of years ago now, which was a shame because that was a big shop. But I know that in Rochester, just down the road from where I live, there's actually a board game cafe called Playopolis, and they have hundreds of board games, and you pay to go in, and you can sit there and you can just pull a board game off the shelf and sit there and play. And they hold theme nights, so they actually did. Do you remember Atmosphere?
No.
That was a game that I played a hell of a lot as a kid. And basically what it was a video board game. So you put the video in.
Oh, yes,
and you start playing. It had the gatekeeper. I am the gatekeeper, you filthy maggot. And he'd talk to you. And if you rolled the dice, you'd go, right, so you've all got to roll the dice. And whoever got an 8, this happens to you. And they do those theme nights down there. So in their basement part, they have, atmosphere nights and things like that, and there was add-ons for it, so you could get the Elizabeth Bathory video, and you could get the Baron Zamdi video as well to go with it. And I did used to have a Star Wars video board game as well, which I believe I never got around to playing because nobody ever wanted to play it with me.
I know there was a Star Wars DVD, Trivial Pursuit, which I have in my loft.
Yes.
I don't think I ever played it, so I think that might still be sealed.
Podcast there one night, mate. We put it on and play it.
There we go. I did pick up for the 40th anniversary. I picked up a Star Wars Monopoly 40th anniversary edition.
Oh, very nice.
We haven't opened that either.
I have a Star Wars Monopoly upstairs.
Loft.
I bought that from Hamleys, I think, on my 12th birthday.
Did you? It was. Wow. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So that's a little rundown of our childhood memories and things that we were watching and playing.
What made us us?
So if you could go back, mate, to let's say a particular year in your time machine,
mm-hmm.
and run into a toy shop and grab something, what would you go and grab that you don't have now that you'd think, I missed that, didn't get it, or...
Wow. I don't know, mate. That is such a hard question. Because honestly, my focus is Star Wars, and I'd like to get so much more of that. But I was in the middle of it all.
Okay, so you're the age you are now. You're going to go back into a big toy shop. You're going to run in there, and you're able to grab as much as you can without dropping it.
I honestly don't know. It was a dark time for toys when I was a kid, like figure wise. We didn't have Marvel, we didn't have Star Wars things. It wasn't a big then. But I think for me, I used to love my monster stuff. Like I say, all my Boglins and my Monster in My Pockets, they were my prized possessions. I had.
So did you have all of those?
Yeah, I had it all. Like,
right.
I've still got the, there was a display and it was like a mountain shape and it had all the cutouts for the Monster in My Pockets and you put them in there. And I had like 4 of them all on my wall, all completely filled up.
There's got to be something though that you think I didn't get one of those for birthday or Christmas.
There probably will be. When I finish recording this, I go, oh damn it, I remember I used to have these, I can't remember, called Rats or something, R.A.T.S, and it was like little machines that they fired discs and they were like vehicles and stuff. And I always remember like one of them been wanting more of them because they were like, my brother used to nick them off me all the time. But yeah, I don't know. I think if it was anything, to be honest, it would be gaming again, because I always wanted a Nintendo. I've never like original NES or SNES. I never had them as a kid. I've had GameCubes and Wii's and things since, but there is a big part of retro gaming that I probably think that I wish I could experience firsthand.
Would you like to just nip back to, say, 1979, 1980 and just grab Atari?
If I could go back to any year before I was born, it would be 1977 and I would clear those shelves of Star Wars toys.
You can't. You've only got, two pairs. You've got 2 pairs of... You only got 1 pair of hands there, mate.
1 pair of hands. Oh, okay.
It's okay, go on then. What are you going to grab? Go on. You've got your time machine set for a date and a year.
Oh, it's on the spot question here, mate. It really is. Right. Okay. The holy grail of items, I'd go back in time and get a Farm Boy Luke mint on card, and I'd come home with that and I'd be happy with it. It may not be the most valuable and prized one of the lot, but it's definitely the one that I'd like the most. But yeah, gaming wise, it would probably go back and get something like you say, an Atari, or probably say a SNES, a Super Nintendo, because the NES had some good games on it, but the SNES is one of those that won the console war of that generation, and I never had it. Even to this day, I've probably played on a Super Nintendo 2 or 3 times. Like, I've played a lot of Super Nintendo games through emulation, but even the feel of the controller in my hand isn't something that I've got memory of, like muscle memory or anything. I can pick up a Mega Drive pad now and it feels like I'm home. but I don't know Nintendo, and that's something I'd like to go and experience them firsthand on the platform they were intended for. So, on the spot answer, but that's,
You'd open that box very carefully, wouldn't you? When you bring that home, you got your Farm Boy Luke, you put that on the shelf.
Oh, yeah.
And then you open you very carefully a box of your Nintendo.
Yeah, totally, mate. How about you?
Mine would be 1978. Palitoy released the Death Star playset.
Is it the cardboard one?
Yeah, my mate had it, and it was the only thing of his collection that when he eventually sold them to buy a Fender guitar, I hadn't spoken to him until last year for 30 years. So first question I asked him was, what have you still got? And he said, I sold it all to buy a guitar. And so mine would definitely be that. So that would be that. I would be carrying that first without grabbing a Vinyl Cape Jawa on card. And this is hoping the toy shop that I go into has got one.
What about Blue Snag?
The toy shop wouldn't have it because it was a Sear exclusive with the Cantina playset. So, so I would probably grab the first 12 on card. So yes, that would be Luke, Leia, R2, Chewie, Han, Death Squad Commander, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Darth Vader, Stormtrooper, Tusken Raider, and a Jawa. Yeah. So they would sit on top of my Death Star playset. And if I could put all that into a basket and hang it off the handlebars of a rally chopper, I'd probably do that and ride.
My dad's always going on about his chopper.
Yeah, and then I would dump it near the time machine and then go back in the shop and grab the Corgi box set of the Batmobile. Because a mint one of those is a beautiful thing to look at in the box. Maybe a couple of dinky toys. There would be that. Just to get the Enterprise in box would be quite a nice thing. But yeah, it would undoubtedly be an X-wing, boxed X-wing mint box.
I'm going to change my answer now to Death Star
playset. No, sorry, mate. Death Star playset and the first 12 on mint on card. I would be a very, very happy boy. Because again, at that time, I didn't get the Death Star playset. I did get a Falcon. I did get an X-wing. I did get Darth Vader's TIE fighter. I got the Imperial Troop Transporter and a land speeder. I'm just looking at my collection behind me now.
I can see
so
you
it's
looking
easy.
at it. Yeah.
But a lot of these things just, eventually they got taken out of the box and the box was destroyed. So certainly in 77, 78, 79, that happened. Yeah. Once Empire toys were out, I kept the boxes. Yeah. So, that would be it for me. And I think that just about rounds up our podcast with our thoughts, ideas, and dreams.
Yeah.
Memories. Thank you very much for listening to what is essentially now episode number 9.
9. Wow.
And
nearly in double figures, mate.
In double figures, and a double figure will be a special. So we'll keep that quiet to ourselves. Thanks very much for listening.
Thank you very much.
Keep your comments coming, and do make some comments onto our Facebook page, Retro Inc., and also our YouTube channel.
Yeah, and please, if you do get a chance, 5-star reviews on iTunes. They go a long way, mean a lot.
Our Retro Inc. podcast YouTube channel is also another place where you can listen again to the shows. Thanks again for listening.
Cheers.
Cheers for now.
Adios.